it myself. But we just need to be advocates and letting our reps know that this is a major problem. So thank you for speaking.
Yeah.
We have 5 minutes left. You want to go for it?
Well,
thank you so much, Josh.
Yeah, thank you for having
Madam
me.
Chair, very much. Thank you. What I might do, and I know most people in the room are very intimate with the housing bills that have been introduced or plan to be introduced here real shortly. As we all know, there are 3 kind of key areas of legislation this year. The first is related to what they're calling strategic growth. There's an area associated with ADUs, and then an area associated with transit-oriented communities. The ADU bill is the one of the 3 areas that has been introduced, and that's House Bill 1152. It is it's pretty restrictive in regards to. We've had a lot of conversations with our local governments and our members with regards to, and one of the concerns that we all have, I think, is the usurping of local authority as it relates to any of these bills, right?
All have problems.
And yes, indeed. And and the thing about the ADU bill, which I find puzzling, is that the majority of communities within this region have already instituted an ADU ordinance for the most part, including counties, right? So, but that bill, for those that don't know, is basically by right, communities they shall allow ADUs anywhere where single-family housing is currently zoned. Also, there's a restriction. You cannot allow. What am I trying to say? There's a restriction on parking. So you can't make it a determinant that parking has to be associated with the dwelling unit. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's that one. That's
I
the one
can
that.
understand it, everybody can understand.
There are some incentives with the bill that I think, are pretty darn good for the most part. But again, Dr. Carr Board has taken a position on that bill. Will next Wednesday. CML has taken a position of oppose unless amended to remove the preemptions that are in here. The other 2 have not been introduced. The strategic growth bill, and that is there are drafts of that. It's very close. It could even drop today. Senator Zenzinger and Senator Kirkmeyer are on that bill. And this is the one I think that is most comforting, probably of the 3 areas, for at least I'll speak personally from Dr. Cox's staff perspective. It respects the planning process, and it respects doing plans, whether those be regional or local housing assessments, to truly understand what the housing problem is. We all know we need more units, right? But the question is the type of housing, where it should be located, and all those types of questions. So, so we're thankful for this bill. I think there will be broad support for this one. It does so there's 2 components of that. There's a housing needs assessment that must be done, and then housing action plans. Each community or region is responsible for having to have an action plan and reporting on that every 5 years as to just kind of a tracking mechanism. The last I might mention is where there's probably the most heat, and that's the transit-oriented communities bill. A lot of work has been done on this, and I know Commissioner Odoricio, he's still on the line. He's been very intimate in this as well. So basically, what this bill does is that if your community has a rail station, a future bus rapid transit route, or frequent bus service within your community of 15-minute headways or less, then you are designated a transit-oriented community. And if you're a transit-oriented community, then you have to come up with a housing opportunity goal. So basically it's a land use exercise that I'll give you an example. So around a rail station, if so within a half-mile radius of that rail station, you had to have an average of 40 units per acre designated basically through the zoning ordinance to allow for that type, a minimum of that to allow. If you cannot or do not wish to comply with that, there will be, based on the draft bill, there will be restrictions to your highway users tax fund money, the HUTF. As you can imagine, that is not going over very well with local governments. And because quite frankly, there's a number of reasons for that. There's doesn't appear to be any nexus between HUTF and some arbitrary housing goal that we're having trouble understanding. Highway users, HUTF is basically used for maintenance and safety, right, of our existing roadway network. And so that's problematic. So if there's that stick, there's also, that bill hasn't dropped yet.
Okay.
So there's a draft that came out yesterday, a more recent draft that came out yesterday, which I'm happy to share with the group, Madam Chair, if they so desire to have that. We're expecting probably one more round of drafts on that bill, Councilman. But that's probably a couple weeks away before that gets introduced. But it's baked. That bill is baked. There is another provision in there that I want to make sure everybody understands, that if you don't comply with that housing opportunity goal, the state, and it's in there as may, request an injunction, basically forcing local government to comply with that goal. So it's toxic. I'm not going to lie to you. I'll be honest. I don't think there's a whole lot we could probably do in the House right now associated with this bill. I think for a hopeful that we can have, based on conversations that we've had, that there could be some room on the Senate side to try to get something, because I truly do believe, and I know Commissioner Odorizio feels similar to this, that there's a win-win opportunity for this TOC bill based on incentives, because the majority of communities that have rail stations or whatever have already done a significant amount of rezoning associated with those for high-density mixed use. And for whatever reason, those zones or areas are not developing the way they had hoped and anticipated. We believe that the appropriate conversation for us in the state to be having is helping figure out what the barriers are in those areas and getting those things moving. Let's start with that before you start some tabletop exercise of, arbitrarily designing land use. So,
In Arapahoe County, we try to build them and then they get burnt out.
yeah, well, I actually had a conversation with the Arapahoe County staff, and they're looking at, based on their tabletop exercise, they're looking at, 60-story towers in order to comply with this, right? I mean, you can zone for it, but who's asking the question whether you should have?
Or you
that
can
type?
afford it.
Well, and the infrastructure investment that's required for that is just, I think, it's being lost. It's the implementation part of this that's really causing us some concern too. But Madam Chair, I'll just leave it there. I could talk forever on
Yeah,
this.
I know.
So
We
just so
could
you know.
actually add a whole other hour to this meeting, but I am not a meeting person that would last for, longer than an hour and a half, so.
Be careful what you ask for, because you may get it.
I know. And I know other commissioners need to hop off here. And I'm reading here in the chat here, but we do it really quick here. Chantel Lewis, Commissioner Lewis, who said there's been an RCD reform bill. I believe Rep. Linsett might be running that one. I'm not sure.
Yes, and Senator Winter.
Yeah, and Senator Winter, they're hoping that we can discuss that here. We do have to keep the focus of, serving our unhoused, and I think that we can do that with, I think, that RTD bill as well, because they do rely a lot on our public transportation. And then, Steve, your question is does MAC have consensus that we should ask the Gov? Is that your word for governor? And TOC sponsors remove the, I like to call it the HTFU stick, but you like to call it the HUTF stick. We have not had any sort of consensus, but we could, it's hard because our next meeting is canceled next month. Do you want to speak to that, Steve?
What?
Yeah, I was just curious if we want to kind of do, can you guys hear me?
We can.
We can read you.
Can you all hear me? Okay, good. I'm on my way to the airport, and my apologies, I couldn't be there in person, but I mean, we could even just do a straw poll to find out if we have consensus enough on that one finite specific issue. We might be able to do just like a letter saying, hey, we look forward to working with you on all these things and finding a win-win, and but our focus would be to ask you not to use HUTF as a threat, given the fact that it's used for safety and maintenance. We believe there are other ways to accomplish this goal. If we don't have a full consensus, then I would withdraw the recommendation or offer. But if we have it, and it's, I bet Doug Rex could be able to take that letter, and we can all take that letter and to our folks and just kind of give them some positive redirection off of that one piece. But But again, I'm not
Commissioner
advocating hard if we don't have
Teodosio,
consensus.
okay. Denver County, we can't do a straw vote on anything that's going through legislatively. We have a legislative suite. So no matter how I personally feel on that, we wouldn't be able to participate in a straw vote.
You know what we could do,
Sounds good.
Commissioner Odorizio, I'm wondering if we could reach out just to the different jurisdictions and what their view is on that anyway, because we do have that view with CCI, we belong to CCAT as well. If that is a consistent view that we're seeing, I don't see why it's already gone through those legislative processes. If Denver's already discussed that issue, if we could just see the pattern and we can just list the jurisdictions in the metro area, would you be amenable to that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
We
I'm
would
happy
need
to
to check
talk
our
to
legislative teams.
offline about that.
Participate. Yeah, Denver wouldn't be able to participate.
Yeah, we'll be able to check with Denver. We know, I think there's been many talks about this, and I believe that that's high on the priority of removing that HUTF stick and working on incentives. So, but if our voice can add to it, then I don't see why we can't do that if we see consensus. So,
Yep.
okay, thank you so much for today. Thank you for being here. And Chantel, Councilmember Lewis, I definitely see you there, and we'll bring it back to put on our agenda to look at that. So thank you. All right, see you all.
Thanks.